Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The hum of machinery filled the lab as Peter Parker adjusted his goggle. The glare from the gamma-ray apparatus cast a faint green light on his face, reflecting his fatigue. He had been here for hours, fine-tuning his latest project, a device meant to help him control his spider ability. Lately, the line between Peter Parker and Spider-Man had been blurring in a way that made him uneasy. His reflexes had become hypersensitive. His webs shot from his wrists without command, and his strength, though useful, was beginning to cause more harm than good. Today's experiment was meant to fix that, at least in theory. But theories had a way of betraying you, and Peter couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was about to go wrong. He glanced at the glowing monitor, checking the gamma output one last time before hitting the switch. The burst of energy surged through the room, faster and brighter than Peter had anticipated. A searing pain shot through his arm as the gamma radiation washed over him, the air crackling with electric intensity. He yanked off his goggles, stumbling backward, his spider sense flaring in a way it never had before. His skin buzzed, his muscles twitched, and a dull roar filled his ear. Not good, Peter muttered, clutching his arm. He struggled to stand upright, his legs feeling like jelly beneath him. His enhanced vision blurred as the world tilted sideways before he could process what was happening. The pain vanished, but something else replaced it. A deep, pulsating sensation ran through his veins. His spider abilities had always felt like an extension of himself, a sixth sense that guided him. Now it felt as though his powers had turned on him. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. The gamma radiation had done something to him. He needed help fast. Across town, Bruce Banner sat in the shadows of a dimly lit motel room, tapping the screen of his tablet, his brow furrowed. He hadn't slept in days, and it showed. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. For years, Bruce had managed to keep the Hulk under control, at least most of the time. But something had shifted in the past few weeks. The transformations had started happening more frequently, more violently. Even when he wasn't here angry, he could feel the creatures stirring inside him, clawing at the edges of his consciousness. He had tried everything: meditation, isolation, even more radical experiments to contain the Hulk's fury, but nothing worked. Worse still, Bruce was certain that the gamma radiation was evolving, mutating in a way that he couldn't predict. He'd run the tests himself, watched the data spike in a way that defied logic. Something was amplifying the gamma energy inside him, accelerating the inevitable. Just then, his tablet beeped. A headline flashed on the screen: Spider-Man loses control, causes chaos in the city center. Bruce's stomach dropped. He scanned the article, his eyes narrowing as he read about Peter Parker, sudden and erratic behavior. Gamma radiation, Peter Parker. It couldn't be a coincidence. Bruce tapped the screen again, pulling up the details of the event. Spider-Man's powers were out of control, just like the Hulk. And if Peter was affected, there was a chance the same force was working on both of them. Without hesitating, Bruce packed his things and headed for the city. He didn't know what was happening, but he had to find Peter. If they were both in the same boat, maybe together, they could figure out a way to fix this mess before it was too late. Peter sat on the rooftop of a midtown building, knees drawn up to his chest, staring out over the city. His head still pounded from the effects of the gamma exposure, and every time he tried to use his spider powers, they acted like a wild animal fighting against its lead. His webs shot out uncontrollably, and his enhanced reflexes made him feel jittery, like he was on the verge of losing control of his entire body. He felt like a ticking time bomb. The sound of footsteps behind him caught his attention. Peter turned sharply, his spider sense tingling at the familiar presence there. Stepping out of the shadows was Bruce Banner. "Bruce?" Peter asked, surprise and relief mixing in his voice. Bruce nodded. "I saw the news, thought you might need some help. Looks like we've both got a gamma problem." Peter sighed and rubbed his temples. "I thought I had it under control, but now it feels like everything is falling apart. My powers, my body, I can't trust myself anymore." Bruce sat down beside him, staring at the skyline. "I know the feeling. I've been dealing with this for years, but lately it's gotten worse. The gamma radiation is doing something new, something we don't understand. And if it starts affecting you too, we've got a bigger problem than we thought." Peter frowned. "You think someone is behind this? I mean, gamma radiation doesn't just go haywire on its own, right?" Bruce nodded grimly. "I've had my suspicions for a while, but I couldn't prove anything until now." Whoever is soon doing this is targeting people like us, people with gamma in their blood. Peter's mind raced. If Bruce was right, that meant they were being watched, maybe even hunted. And if someone had the power to manipulate gamma radiation on this scale, they were dealing with more than just random accident. So what do we do? Peter asked, his voice steadying. If someone's pulling the strings, we need to find them fast. Bruce gave him a look of determination. We start by finding out who's behind this, and then we stop them before they destroy us. The next few days were a blur of research and reconnaissance. Peter and Bruce worked in tandem, pulling every string they could to trace the source of the gamma radiation anomaly. The deeper they dug, the more it became clear that someone had been experimenting with gamma energy for years, tweaking the formula, making it stronger and more dangerous. It wasn't too long before they uncovered a trail leading to an organization called the Gamma Syndicate, a secretive group with ties to advanced military technology and black market weapons. The Syndicate's goal was simple: harness the power of gamma radiation to create an army of super soldiers. And they'd been using Peter and Bruce as unwitting test subjects. Peter's spider sense flared as they discovered the Syndicate, a hidden lab on the outskirts of the city. It was a nondescript building surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards, but inside it held the key to everything the technology that had tampered with their bodies and minds. As they planned their infiltration, tensions between Peter and Bruce began to rise. Bruce's fear of losing control was palpable, and Peter's frustration with his own unstable abilities only made things worse. "We can just barge in there," Peter argued. "We need a plan, something that doesn't involve smashing everything to pieces." Bruce's jaw tightened. "We don't have time for careful. These people have been experimenting on us, and they all keep doing it if we don't to stop them now." Peter crossed his arms. "I get that, but we can't afford to make things work. If we lose control in there, we could end up hurting a lot of innocent people." Bruce clenched his fists, struggling to keep the Hulk at bay. "You think I don't know that? Every day I live with the possibility that I might lose it, that I might hurt someone I care about. But we don't have the luxury of time, Peter. We need to act." Peter took a deep breath, sensing the desperation in Bruce's voice. He knew Bruce was right. They didn't have time for a perfect plan. The longer they waited, the stronger the Syndicate's hold on their powers would become. "Okay," Peter said quietly. "Let's do this, but we do it smart. No unnecessary risk." Bruce nodded. Though the tension between them remained together, they prepared to face the Gamma Syndicate, knowing that the fate of their lives and possibly the world hung in the balance. Peter and Bruce moved silently through the shadows, their eyes fixed on the Gamma Syndicate's heavily guarded lab. The facility loomed before them, an ominous presence surrounded by steel fences and security cameras. The night air was heavy with tension, and Peter's spider sense buzzed with a constant undercurrent of danger. Bruce adjusted the strap of the small backpack slung over his shoulder. Inside were a few carefully chosen pieces of tech detonators, jammers, and a small imp device Peter had rigged together on the fly. Their plan wasn't foolproof, but it was their best shot at stopping the Syndicate before the organization could weaponize the gamma radiation completely. Peter scanned the area, noting the guards' patrol patterns. "We take out the cameras first, then hit the power grid. That should disable the lab security systems long enough for us to get inside without setting off alarm." Bruce nodded, his jaw tight. His hands twitched involuntarily, betraying the simmering tension underneath. Peter knew how hard it was for Bruce to stay calm under the constant threat of the Hulk's emergence, but they didn't have the luxury of waiting for a better moment. Peter fired a web at the nearest camera, pulling it down with a quick yank. He darted forward, his movements silent and swift, disabling the next two cameras in rapid succession. Bruce followed behind, his eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. So far, everything was going according to plan. They reached the side of the building, crouching behind a stack of crates as a pair of guards passed by. Bruce watched them carefully, his fists clenched tight, while Peter worked on the power box attached to the wall. A few sparks flew as he rewired the system, his fingers moving with practiced precision. "Almost there," Peter whispered. "Just a few more seconds." Suddenly, Bruce's muscles tensed. His breath hitched as his eyes flickered green for a moment. Peter glanced over, concern flashing in his eyes. "Bruce, you good?" Bruce nodded, though his voice was strained. "I am. Fine, just keep going." Peter hesitated for a moment, then returned to his work. The power box clicked, and the lights around the lab flickered briefly before plunging the area into darkness. Peter grinned beneath his mask. Got it. Let's move. They slipped inside the lab, their footsteps muffled by the sound of distant machinery. The place was a maze of sterile hallways, the walls lined with monitors displaying data streams and chemical reading. Faint hum of energy vibrated through the air, a constant reminder of the gamma radiation pulsing within the facility. Peter's spider sense tingled as they approached the central chamber. He reached out, grabbing Bruce's arm to stop him. Wait, he whispered. Something's wrong. Bruce narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Peter's gaze flicked to the security panel on the wall. They should vet had someone stationed here. This place is too quiet. Bruce tensed his shoulders, squaring. Maybe they were expecting us. Peter saw his heart raced as they crept forward, their senses on high alert. As they approached the entrance to the main lab, the door slid open automatically, revealing a vast high-tech chamber filled with glowing green energy. At the center of the room stood a massive gamma reactor, its core humming with raw, untamed power. And in front of the reactor stood a figure Peter recognized immediately, a tall, gaunt man in a lab coat, his face twisted in a smug, self-satisfied grin. Dr. Resner, Bruce growled, his voice low and dangerous. Dr. Resner turned to face them, his eyes gleaming with cold calculation. Aunt Banner, Parker, I've been expecting you. Peter's fist clenched as his spider sense flared, warning him of the danger radiating from the reactor. What the hell are you doing? Resner chuckled, his hands clasped behind his back. Isn't it obvious? I am perfecting the gamma process. You and Banner are merely the prototypes, the stepping stones to a new generation of enhanced soldiers. With the reactor at full power, I can control the transformation, harness the energy, and create an army unlike anything the world has ever seen. Bruce's eyes flashed with anger. You replaying with forces. You don't try understand Resnor. You can't control gamma radiation and it'll destroy everything. Resnor smirked. I disagree. I've spent years perfecting the formula, refining the process. And now with you two here, I have all the data I need to complete my work. Soon the Hulk will be nothing more than a relic of the past, and Spider-Man will, let's just say, your days of heroism are over. Peter stepped forward, his voice cold. You're not going to get away with this. We'll stop you. Razor's grin widened as he gestured to the reactor behind him. I'd like to see you try. Suddenly, the floor beneath them rumbled, and the walls shook as the reactor surged with energy. The lights flickered violently, and the air crackled with raw gamma power. Peter's spider sense exploded in warning as the reactor began to overload, its core pulsing dangerously. Bruce grunted, his body trembling as the gamma energy in the room began to affect him. His muscles bulged, and his skin flushed green. I can hold it. Peter's heart pounded in his chest. If Bruce lost control now, there'd be no stopping the Hulk from tearing the entire facility apart. He had to think fast. There had to be a way to shut down the reactor before it was too late. His eyes darted around the room, searching for anything that could help. Then he spotted it, a control panel near the reactor, its base flashing red with warning lights. If he could just get to it. I'll distract Resner, Peter said, his voice urgent. Do you focus on keeping the Hulk under control? Bruce nodded through gritted teeth, his body trembling as the gamma energy continued to surge around him. Peter shot a web at Resnor's feet, yanking him off balance and sending him sprawling to the floor. Resnor snarled, his composure breaking. You're too late, Parker. The process has already begun. There's no stopping it now. Peter ignored him, launching himself toward the control panel in a blur of movement. His spider sense screamed in his head, warning him of the imminent danger as he reached the panel and frantically began inputting command. The reactor's core pulsed violently, and Peter's fingers flew over the controls, searching for the shutdown sequence. Behind him, Bruce let out a guttural roar as the Hulk began to emerge, his body contorting and growing as the transformation took hold. Peter could hear the strain in Bruce's voice as he fought to maintain control, the raw power of the Hulk surging just beneath the surface. Come on, Peter muttered under his breath, his heart racing as the reactor sent alarms, blared louder. The core was seconds away from a catastrophic meltdown. Finally, with a final keystroke, the reactor systems responded. The hum of energy died down, and the core sighed violent, pulsing slowed to a stop. Peter let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But as the reactor powered down, Reznor lunged at Peter, his face twisted with fury. You think you've won. I'll tear you apart. Before Reznor could reach him, Bruce, still struggling to keep the Hulk at bay, grabbed the scientist and flung him across the room with one hand. Reznor crashed into the far wall, unconscious as Bruce's breathing slowed, his body slowly returning to normal. Peter collapsed against the control panel, his chest heaving with exhaustion. That was way too close. Bruce nodded, his eyes still flickering with traces of green. We stopped the reactor, but this isn't tea over the Syndicate. One T stopped coming after us. Peter looked around the lab, his mind already racing with possibility. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Gamma Syndicate was bigger than Reznor, and as long as the organization existed, people like Peter and Bruce would always be target. We'll take them down, Peter said, his voice resolute. But we'll do it together. Bruce gave him a small, grim smile together. As they left the facility, the weight of what they had accomplished and what still lay ahead pressed heavily on their shoulder. The world was a dangerous place for men like them, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough.